Tyler. I'm Pete Troupos. I'm the starting strength coach here in Orlando. And we're going to talk about common deadlift errors. So I get the opportunity to manage the forum, the technique forum on startingstrength.com. And obviously coach people in person and get sent form checks remotely. So I get to see a lot of stuff, and I get to see a lot of what some of the common errors are. So I figured we'd take the opportunity and talk a little bit about what are some of the common errors that we're seeing time after time after time as coaches. See if I can't give you some tips for those of you that are fortunate enough to be able to continue to train as we go through this pandemic lockdown. At least give you maybe give you something to take away that that's going to help with your deadlift. There'll be time for questions after. Go ahead and throw your questions in there, and I'll spend some time right after going through and answering your questions. I am doing this from a friend's house. My friend Ryan here has been courteous enough to allow us to use his platform. We do have to keep the garage door open for light purposes, and there might be some road noise, but we are in beautiful Orlando, Florida today, and it's rainy and shitty outside, so we're doing what we can with what we got. So we're going to go through we're going to go through a few different things. We're going to go through some common setup errors. So everything that happens that people tend to mess up before they even lift the bar off the ground. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about some common movement errors. There are a couple that I want to hit home that I've been seeing a lot recently, and I want to make certain that we address those things. And like I said, if you have questions about anything I'm going over, throw them in there. I'm not going to be close to the laptop, so I won't be able to read them as you throw them up, but I will be able to answer them when we're done, right? So if you're here, you're familiar with starting strength, you're familiar with the 5-step deadlift setup, you understand there's steps to this in terms of why we get people set up the way we do. All of this is to get everybody in the right position, regardless of their anthropometry, so that the bar is over midfoot, that the shoulders are in the right place, the hips are in the right place, and that we are pulling the barbell in a straight vertical path, or as straight a vertical path as we can off the ground, right? Because we want to minimize any non-vertical bar travel that the body has to react to and exert energy against to keep its balance. We'd rather that energy and effort be put into putting more weight on the bar, right? So everything we do is to get a nice vertical bar path with the setup. So I'm going to use Ryan today to demonstrate a few things, and if you, like I said, if you got any questions as we go, throw them up. So one of the main issues that we continue to see is just getting wrapped around the axle on the distance of the bar from the shins, right? We say about an inch. That about an inch is a heuristic more than a law, and it's really meant to get the bar over the middle of the foot. Now, depending on how you're built, depending on how big your feet are, that position might be a little bit more than an inch or might be a little bit less than an inch, depending on your anthropometry. So I'm not as worried about it exactly being an inch as I am being approximately over the midfoot. And then as we get the lifter in a position, I'll show you a couple of landmarks that we're looking for to make certain that you are in the right position to pull the bar. So don't get wrapped around the axle is the point. There's other things that are as important that are going to make certain that the bar is over midfoot, but start with an inch and then you'll work your way in and out from there as you go, right? So the second step is going to be to grab the bar, right? That's pretty simple, but we don't want to move the bar because, lift your hips up, just grab the bar, don't bring your shins yet. We don't want to move the bar because we spent all this time getting it over in the right place. The next big mistake I see people make in the setup is when step 3 comes, and when you tell you to bring your shins to the bar, what ends up happening is some people will actually rock forward to bring their shins to the bar. Now his shins are touching the bar, but the problem with this is that his weight is now forward of midfoot. So for him to pull this, he's going to actually end up having to rock back, or if it's heavy enough, it's going to put him on the midfoot. But if it's not a circummax lift, the bar might actually end up swinging away from him if you try to pull from your toes. So what we want to see as coaches is we want to see the shins come to the bar by dropping the hips there. And as soon as they touch the bar, that's it. The hips don't drop anymore. Now, I'm looking at a couple different landmarks. Now that his shins are against the bar, I'm looking at his shin angle, and I'm also looking at where his scaps are relative to the bar. So if I'm looking at it from the side, or you're filming yourself from the side, coincidentally, this is the best angle to film your own deadlifts from. But if I'm looking at it from the side, I want to see the scaps directly over the bar and the shoulder joint, the glenohumeral joint, just forward of the bar. Your hips up just a little bit, pull the bar back. Hips up just a bit, and then pull the bar back there. Right, so that's what I'm looking for as a coach. Now, if he's on midfoot, so make sure I'm midfoot, the shin angle's correct, the bar's over midfoot, I should see that the bar's directly underneath the scaps here. So from this position, what we'll see sometimes too is folks will start to, if they're trying to get set up and set the back, and we'll go over setting the back momentarily, but what they'll end up doing is rocking back to their heels. So rock back to your heels for a second. Keep them on your shins and rock back to your heels. So what ends up happening with a heavy enough bar, now this bar isn't light, it's pretty light because he's got a squat and deadlift tomorrow. With a heavy enough barbell, you can get away with this, where we can see folks actually rock back to their heels to get set up, and it makes the shins completely vertical. So now most of your weight is behind midfoot, and you're not in the optimal pulling position, and what's gonna happen with a heavy enough load is everything's gonna shift forward before you break it off the ground anyway. Right, you okay? Yep. All right. So stay midfoot. If you have to rock back and forth a little bit from toes to heels and toes to heels to find that midfoot spot and make sure you're there, then by all means. But make certain that you're midfoot and you're not setting up on your heels or your toes. The next big issue that we see is with the setup is step 4, and that is the setting of the back. You can relax for a second. So what we're trying to do is get all of the spinal extensors to contract and hold right before we pull. There's a couple different things we're looking for when we do that. One is, and if you've read the book, you'll notice that it talks about seeing the wrinkles in the shirt as the back goes from more flexed to more extended. That's one. The other thing we're looking for is we're looking for the slack to be pulled out of the bar. And there's a few different ways you can figure out whether or not you're doing that. So go ahead and get down. Now with a light enough bar on your first warm-up, say, when you pull the slack out of the bar, if you're setting the back hard enough, leave your hips there, and your hips in the right place, and you set the back hard enough, the bar actually will start to float off the ground. That's one way you know that you're getting all the slack out of the bar. Your hips up just a little bit. Set the back hard. So the bar actually might float. It's coming about an inch off the ground. Relax. It's coming about an inch off the ground for him. With a heavy bar, a heavier barbell, if you have less expensive plates, specifically iron plates that have a lot of slop in the center hole, another way to find out if you're getting all the slack out of the bar is you'll end up hearing the bar click, where the sleeves will hit the top of the plate as you're setting your back and getting all the slack out of the bar. If you can hear that audible click, then you know you're likely getting all the slack out of the bar. But if you don't hear that click until you pull the bar off the ground, then you haven't taken all the slack out of the bar. So that's another way we determine whether or not someone's got enough slack out of the bar, really, if they've got their back set hard enough. And we've seen this in, females are able to do this a lot easier than males, but being able to set the back in extension without getting any tension in the arms or any slack out of the bar. And then with a heavy enough barbell, as soon as that bar begins to get pulled off the ground, you'll see the back start to go immediately. So, but if we get all the slack out of the bar, our arms feel like they're gonna pull out of their sockets, and we're nice and tight against it before we actually peel the bar off the ground, then we're gonna be in a much better position to be able to hold that back tight through the pull, okay? So let's talk about another mistake people make between step 4 and step 5. So step 4 is to set the back, paraphrasing. Step 5 is to take a deep breath and pull the bar off the ground and break the bar off the ground. A lot of times what we'll see is people try to blend step 4 and step 5 together, especially if they're tired, they're on the last rep of a heavy 5-rep set, and they just want to get it over with. They try to squeeze up and go at the same time. You'll never be able to get your back as tight if you do that, if you're trying to pull the bar as you're setting the back. So for the lifter, it's going to be a matter of conscious discipline to wait a half measure between setting the back and making sure the slack's out of the bar and then peeling the bar off the ground. And I say peel the bar off the ground because we don't want to gorilla the bar off the ground, right? Yanking the bar off the ground violently is not a good idea because something had to get loose for you to be able to do that right before you try to manhandle this thing off the ground. So getting the back set, full tension in the arms, the bar starts to bend in the middle on a heavy enough barbell, then you're thinking about peeling the bar off the ground. So again, if you got any questions, throw them up. So we'll move into the, that's all I have really for the setup phase. Most of it has to do with either midfoot balance, the bar not being in the right place to start, the hips being too high or the hips being too low. And I'm going to show you, before we finish, I'm going to show you another way to make certain that you put the bar down or get in the right spot before you pull the second rep. Because it's easy to get in the position that we tell you to for the very first rep. Where it starts to come unwound is when people finish that first rep, put the bar back down, and they end up putting it too far forward or too far behind their midfoot. So let's just show you that right now. So the way that I teach my lifters to find the same spot is I'm telling them to pay attention to 3 diagnostic points. One is going to be, is there a weight on midfoot? 2 is going to be, is the bar on their shins? And 3, are the knees touching the elbows in the same spot every time? If those 3 things are constant, then you can be confident in knowing that you're in the same spot and ready to pull. If any of those 3 things are out of whack, then you're unlikely to be in the same spot, and it's going to screw up the next rep. So let's take a look at that looks like real quick. So I'll have Ryan get in his spot. Get your hips up just a bit. There. So now his weight's on midfoot, the bar's on his shins, and his elbows are going to be in the same spot. Now, if you were to put the bar down too far forward, so put the bar too far forward, right, a little less than that, there. Now, to bring his shins to the bar, he's got to sit down further, and what you'll see is the elbows or the knees start to protrude forward of the arms. The hips are now lower, right? And he might be balanced on midfoot, and his weight's on and the bar's on his shins, but his hips are now lower, so he's out of position. Similarly, if he puts the bar down too close, hips up a little bit more, exaggerate that a bit, there you go. His weight might be on midfoot, the bar is on his shins, but his knees are further back than they were at the start, and you can see the result is the hips are now higher. And now we're in more of a stiff-legged deadlift position. So again, to reiterate, relax. To find the same spot, I know that there's a video also on our website, or on YouTube, that Phil Meggers put together about how he teaches his lifters. I think that's a great idea. I would try that as well, but the way that I teach my lifters is your weight on midfoot, is the bar on your shins, and are your knees touching your elbows in the same spot? If you can get used to that position and knowing where that is, then you should be confident in knowing that you're in the right spot for the next rep, or all the subsequent reps after rep 1. Okay? So now let's move on to movement errors. So movement errors, everything that occurs once the bar starts to break off the ground. The one that I'm seeing the most of on the site and in some lifters is pulling the bar around the knees. And this is presuming that they are in the right spot to begin with, right? That they're set up correctly to begin with. If there's an incorrect setup with the hips are too low, that's also going to screw things up, or the hips are too high, that's going to screw things up. So let's assume for a second that they're set up correctly and talk about what happens even when they're set up correctly that's going to screw up the deadlift. And one of those things is to pull the bar around their knees. So what we're looking to do when we deadlift, at least the first few inches off the ground, is for the quads to break the bar off the ground, right? And the knee extension is breaking the bar off the ground. So what we should see initially is when we're looking from the side is we should see the lifter's shoulders and hips come up at the same rate, with the back angle staying constant as the knees extend to break the bar off the ground. And then as the bar gets up mid-shin and approaches the knees will come back, the hips will come forward, and the back angle will open up. But sometimes we'll find that lifters are in such a rush to get behind the bar, they end up pulling around their knees, breaking the bar off the ground just by hip extension. The knees don't go anywhere, and then they're wondering why their back is pissed off the next day, right? Because what ends up happening is the bar travels forward and has to travel out and around the knees, so it's forward to midfoot. you're asking the low back to do a little more work than it should have to. And now you're at a position as you get it towards the knees and up and around the knees before the lockout. So we're going to go ahead and take a look and see what that looks like. So you should have just pull it around the knees. So keep an eye on his knees for a second as he's going to just open up his back angle in the hips and break the bar off the ground without the. So we fix this so often now he's used to doing it right. Do it, exaggerate it even more, right? Don't even let the knees move. Just open the back. Nope.
Still right.
Just keep the knees where they are and just pull around the knees. Just open your hips. But keep the knees there. Nope. Leave your knees there. Pull around your knees like you were before. There you go. That's better. That's it. So what ends up happening is the bar will swing away out and around his knees. His knees won't go back or move anywhere, but the shoulders will come up and the hips will stay in the same spot. So screw up like you were screwing up before you actually tried to screw up. Get the bar on your shins. There you go. Now just open your chest up. Don't move your knees. There you go, like that. Okay, now do a whole rep.
Like that?
Yep. So eventually the knees, you can put it down. Eventually the knees will come back, but not until he's already swung the bar out and around and taken it out of position. So what ends up happening is when he get to circa max weights, there's going to be a breaking point, and he's not going to be able to do that. And something's going to end up giving, and it's usually that the low back stops being able to hold as well as it should, right? So that's one screw up that we tend to see, and the way that we fix that is through a couple different cues. So what I might tell the lifter to fix that is stay out over the bar a little longer. Or hang out over the bar a bit longer so that they're keeping their shoulders just in front of the bar for the first couple inches, right? And maintaining that constant back angle. Another thing I might do is, especially if you're working with somebody else, is go ahead and get on the bar. Try and pretend to grab the bar. Don't grab it, open your hands, just get down there. Set your back. Trim yourself just a little bit here. And then what I might have a lifter do is put a hand here and a hand here and tell them, push both my hands at the same time, right? And if I feel this one coming up faster or this one coming up faster, then I know there's something that needs to be fixed here. But I'm giving the lifter some feedback immediately too, right? Push both my hands at the same time, so they can actually feel whether or not too if they're opening one sooner than the other or pushing one harder than the other. You can have them do it with the bar too, but here's a mistake I made: is if you're going to do this as a coach, and actually have them lift the bar. Remember not to straddle the bar, or at least remember to tell them to wait so that you can not be straddling the bar when they go to deadlift the bar. It's happened to me one time, and that's all it took for me to make certain that it never happens again. So we have keep the shoulders out over the bar, hang out over the bar a little longer. If you're working with somebody as a coach and you want to fix that, there's a tactile way to fix that. Another cue that we give, and you've probably seen this if you've gotten any kind of forum check feedback from the technique forum or from the Facebook group, is to push the ground away with your feet. So we're thinking about holding on to the bar and driving our feet into the ground, and usually it will have the effect of the lifter extending their knees to do what they feel is driving their feet into the ground. And that sometimes will also fix that. But again, we're looking for a constant back angle for the first couple inches and the knees to break the bar off the ground. Okay? If you got any questions about that, throw them up. One other issue that I've seen, and again, this assumes that the lifter is in the correct setup position to begin with, right? Again, we're not going through every little issue that we'll see with a lifter that's not set up properly to begin with. You can fix a lot of issues in your own deadlift if you get a consistent and proper setup taken care of off the bat. That will fix a lot of your issues. So again, we're moving on assuming that the lifter's setup is fixed. So let's take a look at if the hips shoot up first and then the bar. So what you're going to do is you're going to set up, shoot your hips up, and then lift the bar back. It's almost like a stiff-legged deadlift.
So hips up first.
Yeah. So the shins come back and then you lift the bar.
Like that?
Yeah. Again, do it again. So here what you might see in some of the lifters is the knees actually shoot back, the shoulders won't go anywhere, or they'll lag, and the hips will end up shooting up. And this is just a misunderstanding. Either they're not tight enough against the bar to begin with, right? So that you could see that happen if they didn't get enough slack out of the bar, not putting enough slack or not putting enough tension into the bar to begin with, or a misunderstanding of how the deadlift is meant to start, right? Because what you'll see, and sometimes when we cue for them to push the ground away or straighten your knees to start, is the knees will go straight, the hips will kick up, and the shoulders won't go anywhere. So that's something else we would want to correct. Some ways that we end up correcting that is telling the lifter to make certain to keep the bar on their legs the whole time. Sometimes we might do the same tactile cue that I did with him before, and sometimes we might use an over cue, which is the opposite of what I was talking about when he was pulling around his knees, which is to open the chest first. Think about opening your chest first, right? And I don't want him to actually do that. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kill that hips first movement there. So sometimes we'll give what's called an over cue, and it is meant to paint a picture in the lifter's mind of what they think they should be doing, but we are looking for something specific out of that cue that's going to get them to conform with the model. We don't want them to actually do that, but if it gets him to do it, to move in the right way by thinking about lifting his chest first, and coincidentally his chest and his shoulders and hips move up at the same time, then I'm okay with that, right? So that's another common error that we've seen as well. Yeah, so let's see what questions we have so far. So I have a guideline for deadlift warm-ups, how many sets and reps, and the percentage of 3x5 weight. Well, if you're on a novice linear progression guy, then you're not going to be doing 3x5 on deadlifts. But if you're doing deadlifts at the end of your workout, after you've squatted and pressed or squatted and benched, I don't think there's a need to do a ton of warming up. So I might do a set of 5 at 135. So if you're deadlifting 315, for example, for 5 that day, you might do a set of 5 at 135. You might do a set of 3 at 185, 2 at 225, and then 1 at 275 or 285. For the last single, because we're tapering the warm-ups, for the last single, I tend to have my lifters do about 90-ish% of what their work weight's going to be. I mean, if you're deadlifting 225 or less, you probably need to warm up with the 95-pound plates. If you're deadlifting more than that, you can probably comfortably warm up with 135. And then I take relatively even jumps going from that to whatever the work weight is. And you want your jumps to get smaller as you progress, right? You don't want to take the biggest jumps towards the end. You take your bigger jumps at the beginning. So hopefully that answers your question, Guy. Mo, when I bend down to hold the bar, my back arches. That's fine. To straighten my back, I need to basically lower my legs. Is that right? I'm not 100% certain what you're saying. If you've bent the knees and brought your shins to the bar, Mo, and your hips should drop, right? And we're also pushing the knees out towards the elbows, right? That's also going to help involve the adductors. But what pushing the knees out towards the elbows helps to do is it cheats the hips down just a little bit, so that you can get a little bit more leverage to set the back harder. I don't know if I've answered your question, Mo, because I'm not 100% on your question. No, John, the bar straddling incident, fortunately, is not on the videos, fortunately. I'm going to guess your name is Hota. When you start using a belt? That's between you and your coach. I will say that I typically don't have my lifter, if they're just starting and never deadlifted before, it might be a few weeks to a couple months before they use the belt, depending on whether or not they're getting they're fixing what I need them to fix in the deadlift. I will say that another mistake I see people make on the deadlift is wearing a belt that's too wide. So wearing a 4-inch belt when you have a little tiny torso, or wearing a belt too tight. It is possible, especially if you're doing more than singles, to wear your belt too tight, and especially for less experienced lifters. Let me clarify that. For less experienced lifters, it's possible to wear the belt too tight and mess with your proprioception and inhibit your ability to tell whether or not your back is really set as hard as it can be. I've seen that happen where the belt's just too tight. All of a sudden, somebody that could set their back fine before is now having problems, and we just loosen it one hole, and it seems to correct that. So if you're going to wear a belt, typically you can wear it one hole looser, depending on how your belt will kind of. I mean, if you're wearing a lever belt, that you're kind of screwed with that. But if you're wearing a thick leather belt that's 13 millimeters thick, 4 inches wide, you're deadlifting singles from the 500, 600, 700 range, you're probably okay. You probably have enough experience to kind of figure out what you need, or you've worked with a coach that can help you with that. But for less experienced people, I would play around with how tight the belt is, and then you're going to want to wear it just a little bit higher. So, yeah, Cody, they'll be on the Facebook channel forever under videos, so you can watch whatever you want to watch. There's a bunch of other ones that we've done so far. We'll continue to do more. Dr. Rory Alter is going to do one on the bench press. She's a world-class bench presser, and she's going to do one on the bench press here on Saturday. So that's going to be good as well. So with the squat, another question from Adam. With the squat, we look 5 feet ahead, which helps the entire spine straight, top of the head sacrum. When I deadlift, I notice that my head and spine are not aligned, like I'm looking up while my spinal column is at, say, 45 degrees. Cues for this. Yeah, I don't know that you're going to be able to get a perfectly straight cervical spine aligned with your the rest of your thoracic and lumbar spines. We tend to tell you to look 10 to 12 feet out, and that's going to put the cervical spine in a little bit of extension. I think as long as you're not cranking your head up and your cervical spine isn't at 90 degrees, Adam, I think you'll be okay. I think the tendency sometimes especially for newbies, to get the back set and get the chest up, they can't disassociate the head from getting the upper back tight. So they end up trying to do this to get the upper back tight when they're setting up, rather than just lifting the chest up. And what you end up seeing is an overextension of the cervical spine, which is something to address, provided that there aren't other major glaring issues as well. But again, depending on how bad it is, Adam, I probably wouldn't get too wound up about it. If everything else is perfect and you could work on it, like I tell my lifters, even with the squat especially, give yourself a target to stare at. Put your water bottle out there, a set of keys, a small change plate, something like that. That's going to help you focus on something while you're lifting, and you should be all right. So, what can cause lightheadedness when you deadlift? There's probably a bunch of different reasons, John, in my experience. You dehydrated? Is your belt too tight? Did you hold your breath too long? Folks that have things you need to look out for. Folks that tend to have lower blood pressure, they might end up feeling a little lightheaded in the deadlift. But I think there's a bunch of different stuff that could cause that. I think if you're well hydrated and fed, at least an hour or two before your training session, your belt's not too overly tight, and you're not holding your breath forever. And we want you to hold your breath all the way to the top and then all the way back down to the bottom. Putting the bar down should be a little quicker than obviously lifting it up. But if you're doing heavy sets of 5 and it's taking you 45 seconds to a minute to complete, and you're trying to double up and hold your breath for a couple reps, that could also make you lightheaded. So I think it's going to be dependent. There's a bunch of different things. Like John, I can't tell you any one particular thing. Robbie, would you consider the lumbar spine being an extension or normal lumbar lordosis when your back is straight? Yeah. So if you by straight, Robbie, I'm guessing you mean just standing straight up like this. I would consider it to be a normal anatomical extension here. And I'm looking for it because we know when we're bent over in the deadlift, it's going to tend to be flexed. I'm looking for the back to get as flat as possible before they actually end up pulling the bar. And in some cases, for some people, that might not be a very huge difference. But as long as the lumbar spine isn't going into flexion, or as long as I can tell it's not going into massive amounts of flexion when they pull the bar off the ground, then I know it's in a good position. Any other questions? No? All right. Hopefully those tips were somewhat helpful. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted me to cover that you would like for me to go over while I have a test dummy here that can help out with that. Then I will. But otherwise, you can watch the beginning of this as it'll be on a Facebook group, and then tune in next week. Tuesday, Brent Carter is going to be going over how to prep for the platform test if you're going to look to become a starting strength coach. And then Thursday, Paul Horn of Horn Strength and Conditioning is going to be talking about the Texas method and variations that he likes, because he tends to use it in his gym, and kind of where people screw it up and where people can kind of tweak it to get the most out of it. And then, like I said, Dr. Rory Alter will be on Saturday to talk about the bench press, which is going to be great because Rory is got an amazing bench press. Favorite bourbon? I was just drinking last night. It's a rye whiskey, a Midwinter Night's Dram, if you can find it, by High West. Excellent. Pinhook rye, the green cap and the horse's head on the label. Excellent. I tend to like rye. What do you think of Rip being anti-sumo deadlift style? I don't think he's anti-sumo deadlift in general. I think it's just in terms of strength training. Our criteria for exercise selection is training the most muscle mass over the longest effective range of motion to move the most weight. And I think the conventional deadlift fits that criteria a lot better than the sumo. How far should my feet? Your feet should be about hip width apart, David. Yes, your heels should be about underneath your hips, and your toes pointed out about 15 to 20 degrees. So, but Adam, to further answer your question, I mean, I'm indifferent. I mean, if someone wants to pull sumo in a meet and that works for them, great. If that's a competitive situation, I don't use sumo in my own training, and I don't tend to use it with my own trainees when we're just training for general strength. Anything else? Nope. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. We got more to come, and actually, I'll announce it now. Andy Baker, co-author of Practical Programming and owner of Kingwood Strength and Conditioning, is also going to be on a week from Tuesday doing a Q&A. So if you're around, that'll be 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. And so that'll be a good one to tune into, especially if you've read Practical Programming or worked on your own. So Mo's got another question that you said hold on. No, Mo deleted his question. All right, Mo. Stop teasing me. But anyways, Andy Baker's going to be on, so if you've ever read Practical Programming and had questions about that, if you had questions about stuff in his templates that he puts out, and his Garage Gym Warrior programs and Baker Barbell Club stuff, he'll be on to answer any and all questions that you have. So make certain to tune into that. If you have questions after this, then go ahead and throw them in the comments, and I'll go through and I'll answer them one by one if I can. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Take care.